You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, certified life coach, pain to power mentor, and creator of Embody You Mindset Mastery School. I'm here today to discuss living life after disease, disaster, or adversity, to discuss living life fully once again, a life of hope, peace, and resiliency, a life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to the life of your dreams, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Live Free podcast. Today we have Kelsey Connell on the podcast. Kelsey is a mother of four, a public speaker, a writer, and a cycle breaker. The last decade has been a deep dive into examining parenting programming, past choices, and reclaiming her resiliency and strength to help others heal from familial troubles. After a tumultuous childhood, Kelsey was sure she'd never be a mother, but when pregnancy steered her towards mothering, it began a healing journey to be a better mother, a better wife, and to truly live an authentic and healed life. I know you're going to love this episode, so let's get started. Okay, so welcome to the podcast, Kelsey. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm looking so forward to hearing about your story. So let's start a little bit about your background and where are you from?
So I am originally from Ontario. My husband and I, we were dating at the time, but we moved out here about 15 years ago and we've never looked back. When we moved to Saskatoon, we were looking for a fresh start for both of ourselves. I'd had a cancer scare. He was looking to kind of start over. There was a huge bust in the economy, and he heard that Saskatoon had the happiest people per capita. So he came out, and after about 4 years, we realized that conceiving a baby didn't seem to be in our cards. And so we had just kind of resigned ourselves to being, the awesome aunt and uncle traveling the world. And almost, 4 weeks to that day, I found out I was pregnant. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this because I have a very, very tumultuous relationship with my mom. And I knew that generational trauma ran very deep in our family, and having a baby I couldn't. There was no way I could do it because I assumed that I would just be another cog in that cycle, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to get through it. I was quite so to go back even further, actually, when I was 12 years old, my mom, I found out that my mother was having an affair on my dad, and my dad was drinking a lot, and my mom was very unhappy, and I felt like we had this relationship where we were like best friends because I knew these big secrets. And I have two younger sisters, and mom had said she was going to take us with her, and then she didn't. She left in the night, and when I woke up that next morning, I remember just being like, what? No, like she was supposed to take us with her. Her whole thing was that my dad was a drunk. So why was she leaving these three little girls with a drunk? How was that going to benefit any of us? And not even that. What mother leaves their children? You do hear of people separating, but a lot of times moms become the primary caretaker, and mom was just gone. And I didn't realize at the time, like I was prepubescent. I got my period a few weeks after she left, like things like that, it just felt really hard on me. I was the oldest, and I think, when you're the oldest, that's almost its own form of purgatory, because your parents are the ones learning how to parent you, and then you, as the oldest, have a lot of responsibility for any subsequent siblings. And so taking on that role was really hard for me. And then my dad and I just couldn't find our way in this family of four. Our grief was just so deep, and my dad wasn't a very good communicator. And I ended up leaving, and I did go end up in a few months after my mom left. I did go move in with her and her lover and his family, and I just really started to see how our parents aren't perfect. Because as children, we think our parents are perfect and they can do no wrong and they're just, the apple of your eye. And when I moved with my mom and her partner to this new town where I knew nobody, I really began to kind of see the fractures in my mom. And I essentially started to really resent her. I felt very abandoned by her when she left us. And then I felt even more abandoned, even though I lived with her. I felt very abandoned by her because my mom was in love. She was in this new relationship. She was, and everybody knows what new love feels like. It's, especially after my mom was with my dad for 17 years since she was a teenager, right? So I think it was just doubly exciting for her. And, and then my mom had to go to work. She had to pay bills. And, my mom was a stay-at-home mom for a long time before she, went back to work when I was maybe around 10 or 11. And it was just very apparent that my mom wasn't really interested in parenting me. And I almost think too, in hindsight, I think my mom just thought I could do it. I think she thought I was okay, that I was mature enough and I was smart enough and old enough to kind of take care of myself. And I obviously wasn't. I was 12 years old. And I was in this big town, which felt like a city, right? Like it was this big, huge town. And, it was there that I was introduced to drugs and drinking and, brand name clothing. That was a big one. Like I had no idea about brand name clothing. Like we shopped at Kmart, and then you get there and I've got these like rich friends who wear like Tommy Hilfiger and Columbia, and these things I had no idea of. And, my mom, we never had any money, and because I was so desperate for love, right? I wanted my mom to love me and show me that love. I found that in boys, and then boys are problems, when you're young and you're trying to play at being an adult and you're trying to have these, mature relationships and you're trying, you're having sex and you're doing all these things when you really aren't emotionally prepared for it. It just causes so much drama. It's just drama. So I felt like my teenage years, although they were very fun, like I did love high school for the most part. It was very tumultuous because I had no rules. There were no boundaries. I, was drinking a lot. I was doing drugs. I was sleeping around. Like I was partying all the time. And I didn't put the two and two together that at the time. I did now, obviously. But at the time, I didn't realize that was my cry for help. I was needing a parent. My dad and I had zero relationship after what I felt like him kicking me out. And my dad isn't like I said, my dad's not a great communicator. So it was just I just kind of felt like I was at sea with, a rowboat and one oar and just, I was just going in circles. And then, and I just figured I was never going to be a parent. I couldn't do this. I saw what my mom did to me and my sisters. I saw what my grandmother had done to my mom. We never had a relationship with my grandmother. Excuse me. But, so yeah, I knew that was just never going to be in my cards. And also, which I find interesting too, was, I got endometriosis and I thought, okay, well then that really solidified I'm to be a mom because my body was really, really, really betraying me. I really had periods. I would be like, killed with pain. Like I couldn't walk. I had really bad endometriosis as a teenager. And in hindsight, I didn't know that was disease in my family being, the disease that was trying to manifest in my body. We weren't communication. There was no resolution. Parents, my dad and my stepmom, that my dad ended up meeting someone else shortly after my mom left, and they put me in therapy right away. And I think part of putting children in therapy when they're really young and you're not really kind of cognizant of what's happening there made me feel like it was worse than it probably was. Because they kept asking me, well, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? How are you feeling? What are you feeling? And it was just all the time. It was kind of this barrage of questions all the time that I just thought, maybe if we had kind of just moved on and talked about things and we worked through it as a family and we didn't bring in this, kind of third party, maybe this would have gone a little easier. But it made me feel like there was something very wrong with me right out of the gates. And then So yeah, just moving forward, I just thought, I could never be a parent. I didn't want to be a parent, but then I got pregnant. So, sorry, I have a cold. When I found out I was pregnant with Claire, I just thought, I can't be like my mom. I can't be like my mom. I have to break this. And I don't have a choice now. Like, I'm having this baby. I am going to have a baby, and something has to change. And that was when I realized that I had to turn the light towards my shadow. And I had to figure out what I was going to do so that I did not contribute to the cycle. What was I going to do? And what did that look like? Because yeah, I knew I had been, promiscuous, and I knew that it was because I was looking for love. And I knew those kind of surface things. Anybody could look at my situation and know exactly what I was doing, what I was seeking. But then it was like, okay, well, how else has this manifested in me? I had a lot of anger. I was very short-tempered. I found myself I was a people pleaser. Especially around women. Women have been, a really big lesson for me. I have the same group of girlfriends that I had since I moved to that town, that I met when I was 12, and they're still like my soul sisters. But we had a lot of problems, growing up, where I wouldn't speak up for myself, and I felt like I let women walk all over me. I let girls kind of, I don't want to say bully me, but just kind of like be mean to me, and I just kind of take it. And I noticed that, I was quite insecure. I was a very insecure person. And, you don't want that for your daughter, especially when I found out I was having a girl. When she came out, and I was like, I thought I was having a boy. So when she came out and was a girl, I was like, oh no, now we have double problems. A boy, I think I could have handled a little differently, but now I have a daughter, and I don't want her to be anything like me. I don't want her to go through any of those hard things that I went through. I don't want her looking for love and, the guy who looks at her twice. I don't want her picking guys who treat her like garbage. Like, I had a lot of toxic relationships, one specifically where it was just like, what am I doing? Why am I with this person? Even my best friend, who was a girl, that was an abusive relationship too, for a very long time. And I would just take it. Like, I felt like I deserved it, because if my mom and dad didn't love me, then I deserved whatever I kind of got. And so when I had Claire, I was like, okay, I have to take this, and I have to change the narrative. I can't be abandoned anymore. I can't be victimized anymore. I can't be a people pleaser. I have to find strength in this, because being a victim served me. It served me really well. I found it made me kind of manipulative, especially in my relationships with men. I would just be like, oh, well, I cheated on you because this happened to me when I was a kid. Things like that. Like, I found myself very, very kind of inadvertently manipulative, and that's an ugly trait, right? And
it gives a level of excuse.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I've got to do better here. And so I started going, and that was another thing that happened right before I found out I was pregnant with Claire, was I started getting really bad anxiety, like agoraphobic anxiety. I could not leave my house. I just couldn't function. And so I went to therapy again. I always love going back to therapy. And I was seeing this man named Dallas. He's in Saskatoon, and he is a lovely human being. And he said to me, I invite you to get over yourself, Kelsey. And I thought, what? And he says, I'm going to give you an example. So you and Christine, you guys go for coffee. You're at the Starbucks over on 2nd here. And you have coffee, and you have a great visit, and then you leave. She goes one way, and you go another way. By the time Christine hits the corner, she's thinking about the groceries she has to pick up, the podcast that she wants to plan, the book she's writing, her husband, her friends. She's thinking about her own damn life. And you're walking away thinking, well, maybe Christine thought this about me. Maybe Christine thinks this. And maybe I shouldn't have said this. And why did I say that? Oh my God, that was so dumb. Why did I say that? Nobody's thinking that, Kelsey. Everybody is thinking about their own selves. Everyone. And your anxiety is stemming because you do not love yourself. So you think everyone is thinking about you, talking shit about you. That's what your problem is here. This isn't anxiety, or it is manifesting as anxiety, but that's not the root here. The root is you don't have any self-love. To me, this was a decade ago. This wasn't a big fad word like it is now. I immediately went to the library. I typed in self-love into the search engine at the library computers, and up came a book called Spirit Junkie by Gabrielle Bernstein. Okay, I took that book out, I went home, I read it in 2 days, and I was like, oh, yeah, I've got a big problem here. And this is all essentially coming back to me not loving myself because my parents didn't love me. But I'm an adult now. So what am I going to do with this? Can I find a way to love myself and then allow that to lead from love, not from fear, to raising my daughter? And that's essentially what I went right down the rabbit hole of, I continued therapy and self-help books, and I joined a women's circle and went to women's retreats and Reiki, all the energy work. I actually, at the time, I was still smoking quite a bit of pot, and I do think that was contributing to kind of my mental breakdown with the anxiety and depression. So I quit cold turkey and, started going for walks and just trying to move my body. And and then right after this, when I was pregnant with Claire, so I was like, well, that's funny. Here I am trying to get through this anxiety, realizing I'm not, I don't love myself and I need to do something. And then I find out I'm pregnant. And I just thought, okay, this is all part of the cycle. So I gave birth to Claire, and I continued. Actually, I was in university, so I was continuing classes online and at night, and just really trying to break down the belief system and the programming that I had, the programming that came from my parents as parents to how to raise my daughter, and then the programming of the beliefs that I had, that I wasn't good enough, that I was never worthy, that I wasn't lovable, and breaking those down. And then after I had Claire, during my pregnancy, I'd resigned myself to being a mother. Obviously, I didn't have a choice. I was like, oh, here we go. But after I had her, and she was such an amazing baby, I thought, okay, I want to grow my family. I think we can do this. I really want to have more. And it became like a primitive need. And when Claire was about 3 months old, I got pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, Clay, we're that couple. We're like a billboard couple. The couple who never thought they'd have kids, have 2 kids back to back. Wow, this will be amazing. And then at Claire's first birthday party, I started miscarrying at 10 weeks. It was at her birthday party, and I was bleeding. And my friend was there, who was a nursing student. And I just said, I'm bleeding and I don't know what to do. And Nicole said, you know what? You've really overdone it a lot today. Why don't you just sit down, take it easy? It could be nothing. It could still early, and just take it easy. And that night, by the time everyone had left, I knew I was losing that baby. And that just started this, Clay had been drinking at the party. So I had to drive us to the hospital, and I could barely see through my tears. I was really distraught over this loss. And the hospital was very dismissive, as they tend to be. It turns out that even though I was 10 weeks pregnant, I had started losing this baby at around 8. So they were very are you sure you're 10 weeks? Are you sure? Because I wasn't coming up very well on the external ultrasound. And it was just really, really hard. And that was kind of the catapult to the next 4 years of going through really, really tough secondary infertility. I felt like I didn't fit into the infertility column because I was getting pregnant. I just couldn't stay pregnant. And it seemed like nobody could figure out what was going on. So I went to Aurora, the fertility clinic in Saskatoon. I did a few rounds of Clomid with them. But Clay didn't have that. My husband didn't have that same desire to grow our family. So he wasn't really on board to do treatment beyond the Clomid. He was like, I'm okay if we just have one. And for me, I was like, no, we have to give her a sibling. We have to have more kids. If we're going to do this, let's do this. And so then in that 4 years, they were the darkest times of my life, Christine. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't do the work. Because that's what it is, right? It's work. And it's something that you have to keep working at over and over and over. And you have to do the same shit over and over and over, because something doesn't land. It doesn't stick, right? So I just had to fight. That was a fight, to be honest. Because there was days it was like, well, I just want to curl up and I just want to get drunk on my couch and I want to watch trashy TV. But then I was like, well, that's not going to get you anywhere. Fair. And in the 4, I ended up going on to have 4 losses, and at 10 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, and 5. And every single loss was on a major holiday. So one was on a trip with my sisters to the mountains. Another was on the August long weekend. Another one was on a camping trip with my family. Like camping, gross. I mean, you're bleeding everywhere and you're like in the middle of the woods. It was just absolutely awful. And I remember the one day we were camping up near Waskesiu, and I went and sat down on the dock of this little lake. It's called Sandy. It's just outside Waskesiu. It's a tiny little lake. There's nothing there. And I sat on that dock and I just said, God or universe or creator, I don't understand why you're doing this to me. Why are you doing this to me? And then as I said that, it was like a switch. And I was like, to me, I'm back in that victimhood. Back in that victim. Why me? Why me? And I thought, okay, it stops here. Right here, there's where this stops. Why is this happening for me? Because this is a lesson. And I'm sitting on this beautiful dock in this beautiful lake, and I'm sitting here crying at 6:00 in the morning by myself, and I can't live like this anymore. Something has to give. And so we left that camping trip at Waskesiu, and I was like, okay, I'm going to find the people who can help me, because Western medicine was failing me. So I need to find the people who are going to help me, because I felt like it was less physical, because it was unexplained. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I did all the tests beyond the endometriosis, which I had gotten quite a bit better since having Claire, my oldest. I got to find the people who can help me, because this isn't a physical ailment. This is emotional and mental and spiritual. This is what this is. And I think a lot of women forget that in fertility. We are these big, beautiful beings that are more than our corporeal bodies. We are energetic. We are spiritual. We are like, I'm getting goosies. Like, we are just this beautiful package. And a lot of that gets neglected because we want the quick fix. We want the IUI. We want the Clomid. We want the letrozole. We just want quick fixes. And those aren't long. There's no longevity in that. There's not necessarily healing in that. You might get the baby, but then what about the trauma that came from trying to get that baby? You have to do the work on in all aspects, all respects to that. And so I found the teachers that I needed. I found the people, I found the community, because they're there. They're in every city, every town. You can find these people that are willing to help you on the woo-woo level, if you will. Because there was a lot of people who were like, are you kidding me? That's what you're doing today? And I was like, yep, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to have this baby. And then
damn right.
When I found out I was pregnant with Callum, it was December 23rd. That's my son, and he's my rainbow baby. And it was December 23rd, and I remember putting the stick in a gift, and I gave it to Clay on Christmas Eve. And he looked at me and he was just like, okay, this is great, but when I see you're pregnant, I hear you're pregnant, we're going to lose this baby, you're going to lose your mind, and now I have 6 months of picking you up off the floor. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you're not wrong. Like, it's been a tough go, but I feel like I've done the work. I feel like I've gotten to a place where this baby's coming. I feel it. This baby's coming. And he did. That September, I gave birth to a little boy, my rainbow baby. And then I went on to have 2 more babies, flukishly after him. It was like once I had healed the deep-rooted pain, it was like I opened myself up to the universe, and the universe was ready to reward me. I wanted a big family. So Cal, my son, was 6 months old when I found out I was pregnant again. And I was like, oh boy, okay. And then when Chloe was, 2, we were on a camping trip. I ate a banana and I was like, I don't feel so good. And went to the city, took a test. Yep, sure as shit, I'm pregnant again. And I thought, oh my Lord, okay, here we go. But in all of that, I had forgiven my mom. Forgiveness is a choice. I had forgiven her for everything that had happened, and we were trying to have a relationship. But it was like the little girl in me still had reservations. It wasn't fully healed. My mom would come to visit, and I would be like, it was like I would turn into like a child. I would berate her, and it was almost like I'd be really rude and cross just to kind of see how far I could push it, to see if she'd still love me. I know that sounds really weird, but I would do that.
Not at all.
And it was like I was trying to get her to kind of prove how much she loved me. And so I would be rude, and I'd swear a lot. And, I'd talk about things that I would never talk about with my dad, like just kind of pushing buttons a little bit. And I also realized that I had a lot of anger. And that anger only comes out with my husband and my children. Like my friends would never see it. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, oh, it's there. Like if my kid spills a cup of milk, I too get mad. Even though I know it's spilled milk, I get mad. And I was like, why am I like this? So I was like, me and little Kels, there's a little more work here that needs to be done. We have to keep going. We're not fully healed. And I don't know that we ever are fully healed in things. So I decided to do plant medicine. Last January, I did a psilocybin trip, I should say, by myself in my ice shack on the lake. And it was pretty terrible, if I'm being honest. And I was a little hesitant because I was like, oh, psilocybin, like that's what I think is what I need. And then I met this man named Chris, and Chris is in Saskatoon, and he does Cambo. Cambo is the secretion from a tree frog. So they burn these little gates on your skin, and then they put the medicine on your skin, and then you have you really focus on like the issue, and you're really getting to the root. You can't just say, oh, I'm an alcoholic. It's like, okay, well, why are you an alcoholic? Like, we got to get right down to the root of this. And so for me, everything still was stemming from me and my mother. Everything was still coming back to that. My judgments, my anger, those were kind of the big two. Is I found myself very judgmental, and my need for perfectionism, right? Because when you don't have safety as a child, you become very controlling as an adult, because now you can control what you can control. And so that need to control creates, perfectionism. It creates an all or nothing mentality that's not sustainable. It created, almost its own form of anxiety as well, and kind of this self-loathing, because if it's an all or nothing and then I screw up, if I'm exercising all the time and then I go for a Big Mac, I'm beating myself up so hard, not realizing, balance. It was like I just couldn't have that. So I met with Chris. We decided on a 2-day ceremony, and in my visions, because it's not a hallucinogenic, you are focused. You're very much thinking about the thing. And I saw my mom pregnant with me, and I was like, oh, okay. I felt like that was my soul saying, give her some grace. She's carrying her own trauma, and then her mother's trauma, and probably her mother's trauma. There's so much trauma she's carrying here. And can you give her some grace? And I thought, right, okay. Because I had asked my mom once before, I want you to tell me your story. I don't want you to talk to me like we're mother-daughter. I want us to be equals. And I want you to tell me your story from the beginning. And I want to know all of it, Mom.
It's so brave.
She told me a horrific story that left me in tears. Absolutely in tears. And when we hung up the phone that day, and I'll never forget it, I remember just thinking, she could have been so much worse. We could have been so much worse. It could have been so much worse. Be grateful it wasn't worse, Kelsey. Because it could have been. My mom did the best she could with what she had. And what she had wasn't much. She had an alcoholic father who he did love her, but he loved his demons more. And she had a mother who preferred men and partying over her husband and kids. And so her and her brother were always being shipped between family members. And, mom just never had stability. And my heart just broke for her. So in this Cambo ceremony, I saw my mom and my dad standing there. And what's funny was I saw my mom and dad when I was 12. I didn't see them as the people they are today, right? Because they're not the same people they are today. And that's another thing we need to remember when it comes to our parents. They're not the same person. And likely they don't even remember half the shit that they said that's affected you to this day. So yeah, I'm going off, sorry. So I see my mom and my dad, who are in their 30s essentially, and I'm 12, and I just look at them and I'm like, I don't need you anymore. I've let these labels, glue me together for so long. This label of abandoned and alcoholic father and absent mother and abandoned and victimhood and all of this. These have been the labels that have been my glue. And I'm not doing this anymore. I don't need you. I'm an adult now. I'm an adult. Who in their right mind thinks that they can still give their parents that kind of power over them? Those are some pretty powerful parents, if you're letting that to you. And I just thought, I'm done with this. I said, F you, Mom. F you, Dad. I don't need you anymore. do not need this anymore. And I release this. I am releasing this. Me and little Kels, we are going to be just fine. We are okay. And I'm going to release this. And it did. It felt like I cut a cord and they were like two balloons and they just flew away. And I came out of that Cambo ceremony and I was just kind of like, okay, well, that was neat. Nothing really, that was a beautiful exchange, if you will, but that was kind of it. And then it was about 3 days later, I was driving and I caught myself in my eye in my rearview mirror. And I felt like I was punched in the chest. And I just thought, oh, what is this? Oh my God. Like I'm getting goosies just thinking about it. Is this self-love? I felt this warm hug just envelop my body. And I was just like, there it is. There it is. Everything that I've been working so hard to have and to find and to be, I finally found it. And I don't want to put that solely on the Cambo because I was also doing somatic therapy. I was exercising. I was eating better. I was journaling a lot. Like this was an accumulation. I think maybe the Cambo might have been the precipice, but everything was working towards this moment. I cried more last year than I have in my entire adult life. Somatic therapy and EMDR is powerful tools for release. And I looked in that rearview mirror and I just thought, oh my God, I love you. I love you, Kelsey, like so much. And then my mom was coming to visit and I thought, okay, so I've got all this self-love for myself and I'm feeling so good. And, my anger's dissipated and I'm far more aware and I'm happier and I accept my shadow side. That was another one. I let go of that need for perfection and I was ready to just love all facets of myself. Because you can't be perfect and there's no point in even trying. And I realized that. And so mom was coming to visit and I was just like, oh no, am I going to turn into that person again? And she walked through that door and that same punch in the chest of love that I felt for myself in that rearview mirror was what I felt when she walked through the door. And I was just like, oh my God, I just love her. I don't see her as that woman who cheated on my dad, who was obviously, their marriage was obviously in a really bad place to begin with, if that's what she was going to do. And I can't keep holding this decision she made against her for 25 years. Like this is getting a little ridiculous. This is now on me. This is on me. And I just looked at her and I just thought, I love you. I fully forgive you. And I'm making this choice right now. I'm making this choice right now to just love you for who you are because I love you more now than I hate you for who you aren't. I love you more for who you are than I hate you for who you aren't. And that's important because my mom's not perfect. None of us are perfect. And she's more than a mother. And even though that role was very important, obviously in my life as her being my mother, she's more than that. My mom is an excellent baker. She organizes, GoFundMes for struggling coworkers. She loves my kids. Even if she doesn't show it the way I want her to show it, she does. And she is who she is. And can I accept that? Because her truth might not be my truth. Her truth isn't my truth. I think my mom doesn't think she's good enough. And that's her truth. And it's not my job to try and show her any different. It's not my job to try and show her or teach her or preach to her. I can't shame her into changing. I can't resent her into making her love her own self. All I can do is be me. That's all I can do. And when I started the somatic therapy, she had said, when you heal 7 generations forward and you heal 7 generations back. And I thought, okay, I don't really know if I subscribe to that, but let's go with that. And one day I had written a blog post about my mom, and it was a really hard memory. And it was about my mom. I always felt like my mom berated me as a child. She also had the same anger that I have. And I had fallen off a set of swings at school, and I had, the school thought I broke my fingers. Mom had to come pick me up and take me to the hospital. And I just remember on the drive, her saying, well, these better be broken. Like I had to leave work for this. These fingers better be broken. And I remember just being like, oh, I really hope my fingers are broken. And so I'm writing this story, and I had a few other memories like this. And that was the premise of the blog. And I knew it was probably going to hurt my mom's feelings. But again, my mom's not that person anymore. And I know that my mom knows what I'm trying to do in writing about her and blogging about her, is that I'm trying to show that through hard times and through something ugly, something beautiful can emerge if you give it the work and the dedication that it requires. And she called me immediately after I posted it. So like, this is also a testament to how amazing my mom is. My mom reads my blogs. The second they're posted, she opens that email and she reads them. So like, she's amazing for that. And she called and she just said, "Are all your memories of me bad? Are you always going to write bad things about me?" And I was like, Mom, no. And I went on to kind of explain myself, and I said at the end, I said, "You know what? I'll take it down. If you want, I'll take it down." And she said, "Well, no, I know what you're trying to do. I see what you're trying to do, and I want people to see that love and forgiveness can win if you let it." And I said, "Thanks, Mom." And I got off the phone with her, and I was in this really great mood, and I'm dancing around my kitchen, and I call my husband, and I'm telling him about this conversation. And as I'm telling him about the conversation we just had on the phone, I said, "Oh my God, she's healing. She's healing too, and she doesn't even know it." And he's like, "Well, did you tell her this?" I said, "No, I'm just realizing it now." He said, "Call her back and tell her." So I called my mom, and I said, "Mom, do you want to know what I just realized?" She said, "What?" I said, "You're healing too. 7 generations, Mom, back and forward. You're healing too." Where prior, if my mom was hurt, she would either send me a passive aggressive or snarky text, she'd ghost me, and I wouldn't hear from her for months until she got over it, and then she'd insert herself back into my life as if nothing had happened. We never had been able to communicate before. We'd never been able to talk about anything hard without, one of us getting defensive or projecting or getting, just being rude and snarky. And we had an honest conversation. Mom, we just had an honest conversation about our feelings. We talked, we shared, and she goes, "Oh my God, you're right, we did. Look at us." And I said, "Yeah, Mom, look at us." And it was in that exchange that I knew I don't ever have to say one word to her ever again about what she did or didn't do or does or doesn't do, because she is her own person and I am my own person. And all I can do is show up the best way I know how. For me, not for anybody else, not even my kids, for me. And that is where true transformation comes from. Because I've also learned in the last year or so, you are the medicine you need. You are the medicine you need. So I can go to therapy and I can read all these self-help books. I have so many books, it's ridiculous. I can do all of those things, but none of that matters if I'm not willing to look within. Everything you need is within you. And I've learned that through breath work. And I don't want to be a broken record because I feel like this is all I'm talking about with people lately. But in breath work, I realized I am enough. I have a connection to God, source, the universe, whatever you want to call that. I have a direct connection to that. And that in and of itself is the most beautiful gift we can ever be given as humans. The absolute most beautiful gift. And what are you going to do with that gift? What are we going to do? Am I going to sit around here bitching and moaning, complaining about something that my mom did 25 years ago? Am I going to sit there berating and hating on my dad because he can't communicate? That's his own damn problem. I can take that and I can become the better communicator. I can become the dad that I needed for my children. I can become the mom I needed for my children. And we heal that. We just move forward. But it's on me to make that decision, and it's on you to tune into that, to get quiet with yourself. Think about how awkward silence is for so many people. Silence is awkward, but if you can get quiet with yourself, with your spouse, your partner, your friends, get quiet. The answers that come to you are the most beautiful and most profound, and they're just buried in there. Like when you go see your friend and you're like, "Oh, I need advice." You know what the answer is. You're just looking for someone to reaffirm it for you. Everything you have is within you. And that's really the big lesson that I've taken as I'm about to hit 39 here in a few weeks. Everything you have is within you. And so Now I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day and I exercise and I do my breath work. My oldest daughter, she did a breath work with me the other night. Just by me being me and being committed to growth and embracing the dark, illuminating the light, and being the best person I can be. I'm showing the same to my children. My kids want to exercise with me when, I can't get to a workout first thing in the morning. They want to eat healthier. They want to know what healthy snacks are. They want Reiki done on them. I have my level 1. They want to be Reiki'd. They want to, they want to do spa nights. They want to take care of themselves. And all of that is from me inspiring that. And there's so much happening in the world right now that breaks my heart. And I've learned at the end of the day, I have to focus on what I can control. And what I can control is what happens under my roof and in my heart. That's all I can control right now. And I just have to pray and hope that I'm doing the best I can so that that creates a domino effect, so that when my 4 children go out into the world, they're now affecting 4 people, and they're affecting 8 people, and they're affecting 16 people. And it just becomes a snowball effect of just being good fucking people. Because that's what, at the end of the day, that's what we want. And I'm not perfect, and I'm still working through my stuff, and I still have stuff, but I think you can still love yourself in that. And I do. I love myself the way I love my husband, and the way I love my children, and the way I love my friends. And that is the most beautiful gift we can ever be given. And most of that came from me going within, me being willing to do the work, me being willing and wanting to break that generational trauma, and being willing to ask the hard questions of my mom, of my grandmother, of my family, of myself. And really, really accepting the dark while working on the dark. And at the end of the day, that's how you transmute pain into power.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Wow.
I can't hear you.
Like, just listening to you, I don't often cry in podcasts. Like, what a beautiful, powerful story. There's so little to be said other than just wow and thank you. It's everything that you've said here today. I know I resonate with a lot of it. And I know so many people are going to resonate with it too. Childhood trauma is such a common thing, and so many of us don't really know what to do about it and the experiences that we went through. And, and you've really, truly done the work. And I love how you say that, the children will have more children and they will affect, 1 and 2 and 8 people, because that's that 7 generations that the work that you have put in is creating. And so I just want to honor your journey, because it has been that ugly gift, the thing that we didn't really want. The wrapping paper sucked, but the gift inside was so powerful, and so that is just really, truly very beautiful. And thank you for sharing so vulnerably. I think I would probably wrap up with 2 questions. The first one is, I'm curious what you think, if you were to nail down a singular lesson, is the biggest lesson in what you learned through fertility, through trouble with your parents, through growing and healing. If you were to sum it up, is there a lesson?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that strength and resiliency is the sexiest thing about a person. So to find your way to that, to take something that's happened to you and then sit in that victimhood, is so unattractive. It's not what we're meant to do as humans. You think about, it took over 4,000 people and 12 generations for you to be sitting in that chair right now. 4,000 people who went through plagues and battles and migrating, and there's so many things that people had to go through for you to be here today. And to sit here and go, oh, this happened to me, it's like, no, guys, in our society, it's really great to be labeled and to be compartmentalized and to be, to use wording that you hope empowers you, but doesn't actually empower you. Strength is empowering. Resiliency is empowering. Grit. I'm going to give you a quick example. When I first met my mother-in-law, I didn't like her. I was like, oh, she's a hard woman. She's tough. And I was so weak at the time that I was really put off by her. But she didn't have time for feelings. She had 8 children to raise, working 3 jobs on her own while going to university. Like, this woman is just like tough. And I was really put off by that at first because I was like, I don't know how to, I'm not that person. I don't know if I could ever be that person. And I'm very intimidated by you. But the more I got to know her, the more I found, what I was repelled by was her strength and her resiliency, because it can come off a little standoffish at times. But she's a fantastic human being who's been through hard life. Her dad was hit by a train and killed when she was a child, leaving 10 kids to be raised on the farm. Like, people have had some hard times. And the biggest lesson is find your strength, because it's there. You don't think you think I could never get through that. I can't imagine. Go through it. Try it. Imagine, even just trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Strength is sexy. Resiliency. Like, those are the things to me that make a person a person. That's the biggest lesson.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? The best movies out there are the ones where someone overcomes their experience and turns it into their version of power. Those are the ones where you walk away being like, yes, I am energized, right?
Yeah.
And so be that person, but in real life, go through the shit and come out more powerful. I love it.
Me too. You walk away like inspired, right? That's inspiring.
Yeah. It is.
That's the essence of humanity that keeps us moving forward and always trying to be better. It's being inspired by other people.
Hell yeah. So that leads me into my second question, which is, how have you taken your experiences and transmuted or turn them into power? So, for example, I know that you're writing a book. I know that you had a charity for a while. Like, what are some of your favorite things that you've done with your experience outside of create the most amazing family ever, which I think is number one?
You're absolutely right on that. Starting the charity. So actually, when I was going through the infertility, I've always been a writer. I've been writing since I was a small child. So I started blogging. I had a blog called What We Don't Do. It's now defunct. I retired it because that was no longer my story after I had 4 children. But I did start blogging about it. So writing about, and sometimes in real time, like tears are hitting the keyboard as I'm writing because I just need to get it out, because otherwise I'm going to combust, was huge, because I had one of my blog pieces go viral. And so that's pretty cool that my words have been read by, thousands upon thousands of people. So that was super amazing. And then in doing that, and then I was on CBC radio and I was on Global TV and CBC TV as well, and doing interviews. I had a friend approach me who I'd worked with and was like, hey, I'm looking to give back to the community in some way. I'm really seeing how many people are affected by infertility. Do you want to start this charity with me? And I was like, yep. Because when you can't help yourself, you help others. Mm-hmm. And so in doing that charity, like, I've met some amazing people. I have some amazing friends through it. But I also found the resiliency in some of these people. I found the strength in some of these people. I saw the pain in some of these people. So to offer hope is such a beautiful gift. Like, we had people apply who were like, nobody believes in us. People think we need to give up, but like, this is our last shot. And then we give them a grant and then they conceive. And that in and of itself is a testament to, it's not always physical. It's not always physical fertility. And so, yes, so we started the charity, and then I started blogging. And then I also started volunteering with an organization called Empty Arms. So Empty Arms is a perinatal and pregnancy loss support charity in Saskatoon. So I became one of their peer support workers. So I would get linked up with other people who had similar stories, recurrent miscarriages, secondary infertility, unexplained infertility, and I would be their support person. I met the very first person I was matched with was a woman named Catherine, and Catherine and I are still fantastic friends. So to have found somebody, because none of my friends went through infertility, none of my friends. And people will always try and say the right thing, but they're going to say the wrong thing. Because when you're hurting, you're sensitive, and it's very easy for, when someone says everything happens for a reason. And yes, I do believe that, but in that moment, that's not what I want to hear, because you can't tell me there's a reason I keep losing these babies, that my babies keep dying. There's no reason for that, right? So Empty Arms was a huge help in finding somebody who understood what I was going through, and me understanding what she was going through. That solidarity was really important to me. And then I did actually start writing a book about infertility. I started writing a book, almost like the book I needed when I was going through it, where it was kind of broken down into 3 sections, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Because we can talk about the physicals there. There's all the books for fertility, for eating right and exercising right and hormones, health, and all of that. But nobody seems to really want to talk about the other 3 aspects that are important to our being. So I started doing that. But then when I got pregnant with Callum, and then Chloe, and then Kaysley, my 3 children that are under the age of 5, it became, okay, well, this doesn't actually resonate with me anymore. This isn't my world, and I'm really struggling with where to go with this. And then with having the 4 kids, I just and realizing that I needed to be the best mom I could be, I stepped back from all of that. I gave my resignation to Empty Arms. I stepped down as vice president of the charity. I stopped working on that book. I stopped blogging, and I just focused on me and my family for the last 5 years, basically. I stepped down from the charity, I think last year or the year before, but just really focusing on being the best mom that I could be. And now that my daughter's just turned 2, I think it was last summer that I realized that my mom and I have this really beautiful story. And I think that, I don't know that I've ever met somebody who doesn't have some form of issue within their parents, their relationship with their parents, whether that's their mom or their dad. I think my story can kind of cross between both parents. And I was like, what? I think this is a beautiful story to honor my mom and how far she's come, and myself, and also a guidebook for my kids going forward, so that they understand, who I am and what I've been through. They know my story, and so they see why I am the way I am too, because I'm certainly not perfect either. And, I still yell at my kids, and, I still struggle in being that perfect parent that I'll never be, So writing the book, and then I actually did end up starting another blog, and it's called Sips of Solitude. I sat in a meditation a few years ago, and very clearly, plain as day, I heard, "You are a healer through words." And I was like, okay, because when you're given a gift and you've had it your whole life, you take it for granted. And I didn't really realize that I have the gift with words, or gift with writing. And I've taken it for granted. And I had a friend in college who had said to me, if only you could see yourself through my eyes, nothing would stop you. You'd be unstoppable. And I thought, okay, maybe she's right. I've had a lot of people tell me I'm a pretty good writer. People read my blog. I'm gonna do this again. So now I'm just over halfway through writing a book about my relationship with my mom and healing generational trauma, and basically everything I've said to you in a nutshell, in the long shell. That's what brings me to today. And now I'm trying to get in, public speaking and sharing my story, and just helping heal others one word at a time.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. What an awesome display of turning those things into gifts, and your gifts are now being shared with the world in such an awesome way. And you are a fantastic writer, by the way. So how can people find your blogs and your book coming out eventually, and how can people connect with you?
I'm on Instagram. That's my favorite place to be. It's at Sips of Solitude with a period in between. A dot. Listen to me, the writer. A dot. Sips of solitude on Instagram, and my blog is called sipsofsolitude.com. You can find me on both those platforms. I've actually taken a step back from my blog right now. I normally write every Sunday. But I've taken the last month off or so to just really focus and kind of rethink about how I want to show up in the blog space, because there's just so many, and I just want to be sure that my message is being received and that I'm coming at this with the right intention. And I'm also on Facebook at Sips of Solitude as well. I'm not as active there, but I'll answer you. I'll talk to you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. No, I was just going to say, I just want to take a minute to honor you and acknowledge the work that you do, because, I think a lot of people would have taken your circumstances and they would have, dug themselves a hole and buried themselves in it. And you have just risen so high above all of your adversities. And, I know there's more there beyond your cancer that has just been, obstacles to overcome. And I just think you're such a beautiful person, and it just radiates from you. And I just want to thank you for allowing me this platform to share with you and just love on you for a little bit. And I'm just blessed. I'm blessed that I'm blessed to know you, for sure. And so is anybody else who gets to know you.
Thanks, friend. I feel the exact same way. Okay. Thank you, Kelsey, for coming.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found expansion with this last episode, then that means that others will too. And the best way to get the word out about the podcast is by leaving a review. I would be so grateful if you could leave me a review and let me know how you felt about the podcast. Included in the show notes will be everything that we talked about today, including all of my transformative programs. Change is just on the horizon, my friend.